friends, today we are going to see the revolt of 1857 in the modern Indian history. The revolt of 1857 is a very important topic because in the UPSC every year at least one question in the preliminary used to appear, and in the mains also the questions often keep coming, and also it is a very important area where an UPSC student has to be aware. Let us study about the revolt of 1857. Why is that revolt of 1857 had happened? Why the revolt took place in the year 1857, not in 1757 or in 1900s? What are the reasons which aggravated the Indians to revolt against the British in the year 1857? And why is this revolt of 1857 is different than any other revolt which had happened before or some other revolts which had happened after? The 1857 revolt is considered to be one of the watermark, it is considered to be one of the important event which has happened, because the British rule in India can be classified based on before the revolt of 1857 the British rule, after the revolt of 1857 the British rule. I hope you all know, before the revolt of 1857 the East Indian Company was ruling India, they were administering India. After the revolt of 1857, the consequence of the revolt, the impact of the revolt was so vast that directly the British has to come to India and administer in India directly as a Queen's representative. So the 1857 revolt is a very significant event in Indian history. In this class, we will try to understand the causes for the revolt of 1857. Now you see, the causes of the revolt of 1857 suddenly did not emerge or erupt in 1856 or 57. The causes for the revolt of 1857 is a result of a long British colonial rule in India. As we all know, British came as traders into India, and the British came to India through a company which is called East Indian Company. This company was formed in the year 1601. The name of the company by then used to be Merchant Adventurers Trading in the East. Merchant Adventurers Trading in the East. Over a period of time, the company changed its name to East Indian Company. Now the British, when they came to India, they came as merchants. But because of the existence of a political vacuum which was created by the decline of the Mughal Empire and the defeat of Marathas in the third battle of Panipat, the British found that India would be a good ground for the British to establish their colonial foothold. You have to remember that this is also in coherence with the British losing the American colony after the American Revolution of 1776. So after America had been lost with the British, now the British have found that India would be a suitable colony for them to continue their administration, continue their colonial exploitation. So when the British came to India and ruled India in the name of governors and governor generals over a period of time, one component remained perpetual in nature. There is only one thing which remained permanent in nature, which happens to be the exploitation of British in India. This exploitation, which began to be very precise in 1770s in the name of drain of resources, extended in every farm or every field of India. Exploitation of the British did not affect any one particular group. Exploitation of the British had affected larger number of the sections of the society. So the causes for the revolt of 1857, as you all know, is not immediate. The causes should be traced to around 50-60 years of the East Indian Company's rule in India. So let us try to understand which are the people, who are the sections of the society who are affected because of the British rule, and how are these sections contributing to the revolution or revolt of 1857. We will try to understand. So we will see which are the sections of the society which had been affected, why they were affected, how these all were grievances which were existing, and how these grievances acted as an existence of an inflammable material which was responsible for the revolt of 1857. Let us see the sections which were responsible for the existence of these grievances. In this slide you see the British policy adversely affected the position of all these groups which I have mentioned. All the native rulers of the Indian states, they have been affected. The native rulers were affected because the British, over a period of time, they came as traders and merchants. Over a period of time they had begun to conquer the Indian territories. All the battles and wars which were fought before 1857, namely the Carnatic wars, Maratha wars, Mysore wars, Sikh wars, all these reflect only one thing: merchants over a period of time had begun to conquer territories and the British had begun to rule these territories. Because of this ruling of these territories, most of the native rulers, they have been pensioned. Most of the native states had become extinct. So there is a grievances from the side of the native rulers, most of the native rulers, that they have to oppose the British whenever there is an appropriate time, and they are waiting for the time, and the time came in 1857. Secondly, the Jamindars. The land revenue settlements in India, mainly the permanent land revenue settlement in India, which was established by British in the year 1793. Then later we have Rayatwari settlement, we have Mahalwari settlement. All these land revenue settlements essentially did one thing, that is, they had removed the status the Jamindars enjoyed in the society. Jamindars enjoyed the status of an intermediary, a responsible leader in every village. After the introduction of the permanent land revenue settlement, the British took steps, or as a result of the permanent land revenue settlement, most of the traditional Jamindars, they have lost their lives because they were unable to pay the land revenue. They were unable to pay the fixed sum the British fixed because of the permanent land revenue settlement. Over a period of time, these Jamindars had become extinct. In the place of old Jamindars, new Jamindars, they came into existence. The new Jamindars happens to be moneylenders. So there has been a grievances from the side of this Jamindars, old Jamindars, whose power had been suppressed, who had been becoming people without any land. So the old Jamindars had been reduced to the position of penury. Next we have peasants. And during the time of the British, the land revenue settlement essentially reduced the role of the peasant from being one of the owner of the land to the peasant, to the position of a peasant at will. During the time of the British, most of the peasants, they have lost their traditional rights. Most of the peasants, they had become peasant at will, which indicates that if a peasant is not performing, is not cooperating with the overproduction, or is not cooperating with the new Jamindar which has been established by the British, then that peasant will be thrown away from the land. So it is because of this, most of the peasants, they were also having these grievances. Next we can see the traders. In India, as you all know, India in the medieval times was a very important country which were exporting commodities to the world. India is one country which was having close to 50% of the world trade during the 16th and 17th centuries. After the arrival of the East Indian Company, the British mainly based to establish one thing which is called monopoly. The British established a monopoly of trade. Monopoly means the British ensured that they are the only one trading company which will purchase the goods. So from their side, all the relative companies, all the European companies which came to India, they were sidelined by the British by their Carnatic wars or any other wars. All these competitive companies, they were sidelined. That is one thing. So the British had established a monopoly of buying the commodity. Secondly, over a period of time, the British also had begun to manufacture goods by employing the Indians, mainly the artisans. The artisans were used by the British in order to manufacture the goods. Artisans traditionally in India, they made their commodity and they took it to the market. They sold as per the existing demand and supply. So in India, the traders, the traditional traders and artisans made a comfortable living in India. But after the arrival of the British in India, because of the establishment of monopoly, the Indian traders lost their support or livelihood, and artisans also over a period of time had lost their livelihood. Second point why the artisans were put to trouble is because of the large scale pumping of the finished products from Britain to India as a result of the industrial revolution. So the industrial revolution had led to pumping of the finished commodities, large scale mass produced commodities into India. So the traditional artisans, they have lost their livelihood because of this. The traditional artisans also lost their livelihood because of the extinction of the native rulers. The native rulers proved to be one of the largest consumers of the traditional artisan and their commodity. So once the native rulers become extinct, the artisans also lost their market and their support. Next we have Pandits. Most of the Pandits, we may call them into the heads, the Pandits and Maulis, as the orthodox sections. The orthodox sections. The orthodox sections in India for a long time had been remaining opposing to the British because of the British aspect of interference in the social life and the religious life. The British tried to reform the Indian society. The British thought that they are the white men and they came with the responsibility of trying to make India as one of the better countries, and they thought that it is a white man's burden wherein which they have to make this India a better country. So they interfered in the social affairs of India and tried to reform the society. No doubt reformation was essential for the 18th century Indians and the 18th century society, but it came at the cost of forceful reformations. Like for example, abolition of sati in the year 1829, which the Orthodox refused because the Orthodox considered that the abolition of sati should be a step which they have to do from their side, not as a step from which should be imposed from the top. So the British interference of the religion, like the abolition of sati, and I will be speaking about the widow remarriage legislation in the year 1856. Widow remarriage legislation in the year 1856, I will be speaking. All these measures had proved to be an irritating aspect as far as the Pandits and Maulis or the orthodox sections are considered. So all these sections of the society, they have been aggrieved. And I will come to the issue of soldiers or the Sepoys. The issue of the Sepoys were largely responsible for the revolt of 1857. So I will come to the issue of Sepoys and soldiers. Before that, you have to understand the causes of the revolt can be studied in the manner which I have spoken, based on section wise, each and every section how they were offended. Also it can be spoken in this way, which political causes you can study, administrative causes you can study, economic, socio-religious, immediate causes, influences outside, even military causes. So one can study the causes for the revolt of 1857 in any manner of his liking according to his conveniences. Now we will go into this soldiers aspect. Soldiers, how the soldiers were affected by the British, we will try to understand. Now you see, it has been largely said that an Indian soldier is a peasant in uniform. Initially when the East Indian Company came to India, they were lesser in number. So they have to recruit more number of soldiers from the Indian side. These soldiers were recruited by the extinction of the native states and their army. Some of them were observed into the East Indian Company, and over a period of time many able-bodied men had been recruited by the British. And once they have been recruited by the British, the soldiers were subjected to severe conditions, severe restraints which the Indian soldiers did not like. So there were many factors which made an Indian soldier inferior to the British. What are these factors? We will try to understand. First, an Indian soldier working in the British East Indian Company's army was paid very less salary comparing to his colleague who happens to be a foreigner or a British. So there was very less salary to him. That is the first thing. Secondly, the Indian soldier could not have any promotions. The promotions were very less, and how much ever an Indian soldier could excel, he could not rise higher than the rank of Subedar. As one historian has said that even if an Indian soldier is as competent as Hyder Ali of Mysore, he still would not be rising above the rank of a Subedar in the British army. So that is also one important factor which made the soldiers to aggravate. Next, the Indian soldiers who are working in the East Indian Company, they have been racially discriminated. There has been a great sense of racial discrimination. They have been made to do certain jobs which are very less, which are petty. They have been forced to work certain means unexpected things have been enforced upon them. So it is because of this, because of the discrimination also, the Indian sepoys, they were refusing, they were having a grievances. Next, the Indian soldiers working in the East Indian Company were forced to forbade their religion by means the British telling them not to wear their caste marks or the religious marks or whatever it is. For example, an average Hindu would like to have some symbolism in his forehead. He would have something, means he would decorate his forehead. But a Muslim also in the similar way used to have a beard, and the Hindus used to have a big moustache. But over a period of time, when the British East Indian Company, they told that the Indian soldiers were not supposed to have all this. This also became an irritating factor for an Indian soldiers. And similarly, the officers of the British officers tried to discriminate the Indian soldiers very highly. And it is during this time, in 1856, when Canning came after Dalhousie. I'll speak about Dalhousie's actions and causes of Dalhousie, means how Dalhousie was responsible for the revolt of 1857, that I will speak. Before that, Canning's time, after Dalhousie, when Canning came, he passed an act which is called General Services Enlistment Act. What is this General Services Enlistment Act? See, if an Indian soldier joins an East Indian Company's army or a British army, he had been made to travel outside India through the sea or to a forbidden territory according to the Indian tradition. According to the Indian social custom, it has been considered that traveling in the sea is against his religion, and also crossing the sea is considered to be against his caste tradition. So he had been forced to move. But over a period of time, the soldiers accepted, because they were given a bata, so that the soldiers traveled. For example, during the Second Anglo-Burmese War in the year 1852, Second Anglo-Burmese War in the year 1852, the Indian soldiers were asked to travel to Burma by sea. Similarly, during the First Anglo-Afghan War in the year 1839-42, the Indians were made to cross the mountains, and they were asked to march to Afghanistan. This they did, but they got a bata for this, so an economic needs of the Indian soldiers were satisfied. But when Canning came to India, he passed a General Services Enlistment Act. By this General Services Enlistment Act, a new recruit who joins the East Indian Company has to sign a document. He has to sign a document. According to this document, he should be ready to work anywhere in the world without any extra benefits. So he should be ready to work anywhere in the world. So now this is General Services Enlistment Act. Next we'll see the other problem of the soldiers. See, one more important problem of the soldiers is that the role of Christian missionaries. The role of Christian missionaries. The Christian missionaries, it is said that often they were allowed to go into the barracks of the soldiers, where they used to take rest, and they were forced to convert. Sometimes force was used for conversion, and this became an irritant factor.